my top 5 dieting hacks, which will help you get leaner, but also help you stay lean. And they're going to help you get more energized and even transform your relationship with food, because you're not going to feel as hungry. The biggest reason why people fall down when it comes to dieting or shredding fats is they get really hungry and then they can't keep it going. It's not sustainable, right? So these 5 tips not just only work for me, obviously, but they work for all the clients that I coach as a nutrition and health coach. So number 1, this was controversial, but don't cut carbs. Now, I don't like to throw blanket statements out there. Of course, there's going to be nuance. But a lot of people, they do keto, they do carnivore, they go low carb when they want to lose weight. Now, if you can adhere to that approach long term, and when I say long term, I don't mean for weeks, I don't mean for months, I mean forever. Because that is why people fall down. As soon as they start eating refined sugars, refined carbohydrates again, and going back to those ultra-processed foods and behaviors which got them overweight in the first place, it's game over, and they start gaining all the weight back. Now, the reason why I say don't cut carbs or don't cut them down really low is because most people, they find it hard to adhere to, like I said, but also it messes up with their sleep because cortisol levels are going to be elevated when you cut carbs for most. 3, they actually sometimes feel more hungry. Now, obviously having low carbs, keto, carnivore, it can really help you detach completely from sugar, right? And carbohydrates, because you're not having them, right? And if you're doing it right, you're getting most of the nutrients you need. However, when you're restricting a whole food group, essentially, right? A whole macronutrient, you can actually get more hungry. It can be a psychological battle. And a lot of the times your body wants those things as well. It wants fuel. For example, carbohydrates, starchy carbohydrates, right? Rice, potatoes, pumpkin, those kind of things. You know, even like I think oatmeal would be classed as starchy carbohydrates. They actually give you a lot of energy, right? And they can help with recovery in between workouts and stuff as well. So having starchy carbohydrates has been proven for performance to be really good as well, for strength training. So obviously when you're dieting down, you still want to be going to the gym and performing well in the gym and maintaining strength and maintaining muscle. And carbohydrates can really help with that. In fact, they increased performance by 30% on a recent study with the group that had carbohydrates straight after training. They performed 30%. They were basically recovered 30% faster than the other group. So their performance and their strength was up by 30% the next day when they trained, as opposed to the group that had the carbohydrates later. So, and when you're having low carbohydrates as well, it's going to drop testosterone levels, especially when it's for prolonged periods. So, and I noticed this myself, right? The last three times I've cut carbohydrates down to really, really low, my sleep has been absolutely awful. And I already know there's loads of people listening to this right now and they're eating carnivore or keto and they go, Matt, you didn't get fat adapted. You didn't do it for long enough. Take it from me, my friend, right? I've done every single diet in the book. Trust me. I'm a black belt with this stuff in terms of what I know from my body. And this is what gets overlooked with the whole carbohydrate keto talk is people, you know, they listen to podcasts. They do something that works for them. We're a sucker for doing this, especially when it comes to nutrition. People are a nightmare for doing this online. I'm just going to be straight up. They do something that works for them. And I fell into this trap before. Trust me, I've done this before as a younger lad. But obviously I've learned as a coach that actually there's a lot of variance. Do something that works for them and they tell everyone to do low carbs. Tell everyone to do keto. You're going to lose loads of weight, Susie. Do this keto. Do carnivore. Do this fasting thing. It's going to fall off you, Susie. Don't know why I'm using the word Susie. No disrespect to any Susies out there. But yeah. It's not ideal for most when it comes to health and being in a deficit. And in fact, whenever I got shredded for comps, I would always have relatively high carbohydrates. Obviously, I would look better and look fuller for the stage and stuff because carbs turns into water. But I would never dream of cutting carbs out. Like right now, for example, I've been in a deficit for 4 weeks. My average carbs have been about, say, 180 to 200 grams, all through fruit and honey. No other carbohydrates I'm having pretty much. Had a little bit of white rice actually the other day. But, you know, I'm still having carbohydrates in a deficit and I've got leaner and it's felt really easy. And also my sleep hasn't been impacted. I've been recovering well from training. So there's all these moving parts which carbohydrates can be helpful for, but it's each to their own. Look, if you're adhering long term over the space of years to keto or carnivore or low carb and you are thriving and you're lean and you're metabolic healthy, don't worry, it's not a shot at you, but I've coached hundreds of people and I need to speak to the masses. So that's number 1. Don't be overly restricted with carbs. Number 2, avoid mindless eating or eating in front of the TV, right? Research shows I think we eat like 20 to 40% more when we're eating in front of the TV, maybe even more than that, or on your phone. I see people doing this. I would say 80% of people do this, and most of you probably do, right? Or maybe you don't because you listen to this podcast. You're better than that. You're smarter than that. Nah, but you know, sometimes you're at work. I get it, right? Sometimes you're back to back working and you're eating in front of the screen and you're trying to multitask. All right, every now and then, I guess if it has to be done, I guess so. But it's terrible for you, right? Because when you're watching TV, you're distracted, right? And when you're scrolling on your phone, when you're eating, you're distracted. You're not focusing on your eating. And you will eat more. It's more likely that you're going to eat a lot more. And the thing is, the signal doesn't go from your brain to your gut. Obviously, leptin, you've got GLP-1, right, which most people are taking now, right? That's another conversation, which is another satiety hormone. So, but just that signal from going to your brain, to your stomach, it can take a bit of time. And if you're distracted when you're eating, it's going to be even more delayed because you're not focusing on chewing your food. You're actually completely mindless. So what I do, right, is listen to audio or podcast. I listen to podcasts, right? I don't listen to audible books, but I listen to a podcast and also have an allocated space for doing this, right? So, for example, if you're working from home, don't eat on the couch in front of the TV. Go and eat on the table, right? Or you know, an allocated space. You probably got a table in your house, right? Eat on the table. Have that allocated space for eating. And obviously, if you've got family, partner, that's a great practice anyway to eat together when you can. I know you can't always do that. If you're in work, you're in the office, have the allocated space, right? If you have to eat on your desk, right, with your computer there, fine. Turn the computer off. Maybe listen to a podcast because when you're listening to something, you're not as distracted as when you're looking at a screen, right? It's not the same. It's not taking the focus of your eyes, right? Your eyes are still on your food. You're still focusing on the food in front of you. So that's a big one, right? Avoid mindless eating. Practice mindful eating as much as possible and chewing your food. Remember, your saliva, right? It's a big part of the digestive process. So your saliva releases enzymes which help with digestion as well, which can help keep you satiated on top of the fact that you're just eating slower. This is a big thing. The speed of eating makes a massive difference in terms of how much you eat. And it could be the difference between you losing fat and not losing fat. Number 3, this one's obvious with protein, but I want to go a bit more in detail. I would say to shoot for, okay, if you're in America, I know you do pounds, go for 1 gram to 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight, right? And what you're going to find is you're going to feel fuller. It's going to blunt your appetite, of course. In other countries, that would be UK or Australia, that would be 2.2 to 3 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. Obviously, that's got to happen. It doesn't just blunt your appetite when you're in a deficit. But remember the thermic effect of protein as well. Your metabolism works hard to digest it, so it costs your body calories. That thermic effect of food is real, right? Makes a big difference over time. But you just make way better decisions. But the big one is not all protein is treated equally. Yes, we could talk about complete protein sources, amino acids. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the quality of food that you eat. Having protein bars, powders, and things that you get from the supermarket, which say protein on them on a packet, is just good marketing, and it's processed food, right? All of the time. That's going to be ultra-processed foods. And what do those foods do? They promote overeating. The labels are out, so they're going to be over on calories as well if you're tracking food. And by the way, I haven't included this in these 5 tips. Track your food, ideally, if you're looking to get lean. Or if you're getting lean without, you can do it without that, of course, with these practices. But track your food, count your calories, at least for a period of time if you're looking to get lean. Because what gets measured can get managed. I've talked about this before. But back to the quality of the protein. Try and get it all through whole meat, fish, eggs, even dairy, low-fat Greek yogurt, depending on how many calories you can eat. Some of my clients that are in a deficit have a normal, Greek yogurt, which is not low-fat, like full fat, if you want to call it that. Other clients, their maintenance calories are lower. They might just have less body mass, and they have the low-fat Greek yogurt. And they'll mix in like whey protein. Again, if you can get good quality whey protein, I'm all for that. If you can get whey protein and it's not ultra-processed, it's a good quality one. I know a few companies out there, but I'm not going to shout them out because they're not paying me or sponsoring me, you know what I mean? But anyway, so yeah, mixing that in with some Greek yogurt, for example. These are all forms of whole foods as a protein source. And yes, obviously having complete protein sources, I've just named them all, right? When you're having eggs, for example, that's one of the highest biological value. Whey protein and dairy is actually even higher on the biological value chain. in terms of your body's ability to break it down and the balance of amino acids. Then you've got your beef, which is at the top as well. Just meat, fish, and eggs, right? And dairy, if you can tolerate it, goes a long way. So get that amount of protein in. And what I would say as well, I want to tie this into number 3, is make sure you're having enough for breakfast, right? Because what people do, especially if you're trying to be in a deficit, it's going to be so much harder for you. You're going to make it more difficult by not having a really high protein breakfast, right? So aim to get in, regardless of how much you weigh, I would aim to get at least 40 to 60 grams of protein in for breakfast, right? Do that through the real foods that I just mentioned, and you ain't going to be hungry for a good few hours after. Even if you do have carbohydrates as well. People think, I'm going to be hungry because I had carbs. You're not. Not if you have what you would eat for dinner for breakfast, for example, meat and vegetables, right, for breakfast. You ain't going to be hungry, especially if you've had 40 to 60 grams of protein, and you're adding salt as well, which is going to help keep you satiated and hydrated. So that's number 3. These are in no particular order. Number 4 is fiber. But let me just give you I want to give a bit of kind of nuance on this right now. With fiber, I've been in a deficit for the last 4 weeks. And the only fiber I have is through fruit. So avocado, berries, banana. That's basically how I get my fiber. Now, I don't look at those foods as, I'm going to have more fiber and that's going to make me, it's magical. I'm going to be in a deficit. I just want to have carbohydrates, like I said earlier, because I feel better and I get all that through fruit and honey. And I enjoy sugar, right? I'm not going to lie to you and go, because it's got potassium and this, that, and the other. Yes, I do pay attention to that in bananas, for example, right? And vitamins and obviously berries. But I just enjoy eating them. And berries are great because, even strawberries I think are even better. I think they're the lowest calorie berry, but I prefer blueberries. And blueberries are more nutrient dense in terms of the anthocyanins and antioxidants and polyphenols. But I like to have my blueberries. Like for now in the evening, for example, I'll have my usual yogurts. I just have whole organic milk yogurt. I don't have Greek yogurt because I've already hit my protein. I get all my protein through meat and eggs. So I just have this because I'm getting nutrients from the yogurt, but I'm also going to enjoy the meal. So I'm going to have this after. I was going to go somewhere with that then. But yeah, I'm going to have a load of nourishment from that as well because it's dairy. And then I'm just going to eat them, something that I enjoy eating, right? And what I'll do on the weekends as a treat is I'll add the whey protein in there, right? So yeah, anyway, fiber. So cooked vegetables, right? Starchy versus non-starchy. Obviously, you get your starchy carbohydrates that I mentioned earlier, your potatoes, your rice, quinoa, those kind of things, grains and stuff. And then you've got your, obviously, the non-starchy ones then, right? Which is like the cruciferous vegetables and the greens and stuff, right? So I would recommend, if you can tolerate vegetables, but you got to be really mindful of the threshold and the gut and digestion, right? When you're eating these foods. So it's much easier, and there's research on this, the person who's eating a lot of protein and a lot of fiber, they will actually eat less. They'll be more satiated than the person who just has high protein, right? Providing you're getting that fiber through cooked vegetables. I wouldn't recommend raw vegetables like salads and stuff. But yeah, especially the non-starchy, like cruciferous types, if you can tolerate it, right? Your gut. Green beans, I find the low FODMAP ones are better. I can tolerate like green beans, even spinach when you cook it, zucchini, right? Those kind of ones are better to tolerate for most people in digestion. They're low in calories, they're high volume. And that's the good thing about having cooked vegetables, especially non-starchy ones. You can have loads of it on your plate. And I enjoy eating vegetables, but I just don't eat them, to be honest, because you don't need them to thrive necessarily. But when it comes to dieting and being in a deficit, having those non-starchy carbs adds volume to your plate and they're low calories, right? And then obviously you are going to get some micronutrients from that as well. You can't deny that. Particularly, there's something to be said about greens. I have this debate with people sometimes, but there's something to be said about when you're eating greens and, like the foods that I just mentioned there, even cruciferous vegetables, they do contain compounds which, and have anti-inflammatory properties, right? So what I notice sometimes, and more vitamin C and stuff as well, it flushes me out, right? So I noticed that, having that higher dose of vitamins and vitamin C in particular, you're having chlorophyll as well in these greens, which are, polyphenols and antioxidants, right? Essentially. So whatever they do, they seem to help with inflammation. And there's lots of there is some research on these things, of course, but my viewpoint on them really is they are more of a survival food, vegetables. You don't need them to thrive when you're doing it the right way. Like what I eat mainly is dairy, meats, organ meats, right? As well, I have my beef liver every day, and fruits and honey. That's basically what I eat, right? But I do it right and I get a balance. I even throw some bone broth in there and stuff when it comes to nutrients. So doing it right, and obviously I do my bloods and all that kind of stuff. So you got to be aware of these things, right? You can't just like guess. If you're going to go, right, I'm going to do it, don't do what Martin's doing, right? I'm not recommending that. But yeah, fiber to keep you satiated whilst dieting, it's a great move. Cooked vegetables, very smart. Potatoes, I would say that's the number one. Like when it comes to, a starchy carbohydrate, high in fiber, it's relatively high in calories as far as vegetables go, but they taste great. You chuck them in the oven, you have salt on them, providing you can digest. And this is the issue. A lot of people have digestion issues. So you have to pay attention to your gut when you're eating these foods. But it's great. It makes it much easier to stay in that calorie deficit when you're having a bunch of sweet potato, with your steak or your chicken, for example, right? So last but not least, right, this is a very simple one, but overlooked. And what I see, again, coaching so many people, and even I used to do this myself, is mistaken hunger for thirst, right? A lot of people, they think they're hungry, but really they're just not drinking optimal water. And more importantly, they're underdoing sodium, right? They're not overdoing salt. A lot of the times when you're in, like a lot of you listening to this, you're going to be aware. You're probably not, I'd like to think anyway, maybe some of you are, right? But the ultra processed foods, right? It's basically like a drug, those foods, and they hijack your brain. Once you broke free of those foods and you have a mainly whole foods, then it's actually easy to underdo salt and sodium. And that can be a big problem, right? Sodium is an essential nutrient and it helps with hydration. You want to get the water, not just into your mouth and down your throat. You want to get it into the bloodstream. You want to get it into the cells, into the tissues. And you need sodium to do that, electrolytes, right? And potassium as well. But it's 90% just have an adequate salt. So how do you do this? I'd recommend just having electrolytes. So what I find with clients as well, they drink more water when they're having electrolytes. Like there's a good quality one, which I won't mention. But they have, actually, I'm going to mention them actually, because it's my mate Rob Wolf. Why would I not mention them? Because I've had him on the podcast before. He's a legend. Element, LMNT, right? You probably heard of that. It's probably one of the better quality ones. Got stevia in there and stuff. They did find a little thing where they had a trace of maltodextrin in there, but it was such a little small amount of trace that I think, the type of people who sweat about that stuff, it's like, man, you got bigger stuff to worry about. You've been losing weight and gaining it back, and struggling with overeating. You don't worry about element. Like that's the least of your worries, right? And it's good quality anyway. So yeah, anyway, all that to say, having electrolytes in the morning. First thing I would do is make sure you're hydrating properly in the morning as far as dieting goes, because that's going to trick you into being hungry sooner if you're not having salt and lemon with your water. Lemon just adds a bit of potassium and acid and stuff like that for your gut. It kind of stimulates your gut activity. A little bit of potassium and magnesium. So when you're having your, like quarter of a teaspoon or a gram of salt essentially in the morning, 1,000 milligrams, give or take, with a bit of like half a lemon squeezed, it's basically nature's electrolytes, right? So do that, or just get some element, right? I need to actually get a code off them or something, don't I? I talk about them enough, right? I need to get some sort of affiliation with them for you guys, right? So you can get a discount. But anyway, elements for sure. Have that with your water in the morning, or just have the salt and lemon. Like if you're not doing that, don't overlook this, right? Because you're not hydrating properly when you're not having salt with it, and you are going to be more hungry. So what also happens is people underdo sodium or salt, particularly when they're in a deficit and they're trying to diet down. Because when they do that, what do? They cut out all the shit normally, right? And they get more mindful of eating whole foods. What do you do then? You cut out a load of sodium. When you're having ultra-processed foods, you're eating out, don't forget when you eat out as well. When you eat out, you're having like 5-6 times the amount of sodium. So you're having all this salt. You're not having the right types. Obviously, it's being stripped of the trace minerals that you get from things like rock salt and stuff, right? And Celtic salt. But you have an adequate salt. So then you don't get the issues as much in terms of the hydration and everything else. But I've seen this happen with clients as well, where they mistake sugar. They get a sugar craving, but it's actually they're underdoing sodium. And their body's crying out for that. So have that in the morning. And make sure you're having either 1 or 2 sachets, for example, of element or some type of electrolytes. Or you add in like, a quarter of a teaspoon to, your water. Like having, say, even a teaspoon of salt or half a teaspoon. Let's say half a teaspoon of salt on top of the salt that you add to your whole food meals, right? Every day. Do that. Trust me. It really works. Even if you don't like the taste of it, just do it and you'll notice a difference of energy as well, right? Literally, sodium like stimulates your organs and stuff, right? It does a lot of stuff, stimulates muscle activity, brain function, hydration, right? Like it's a lot of it's linked to that. So that's a big one, right? So drinking enough water. And obviously, in terms of how much you want to drink, you really want to drink around about, I want to just throw a random number out there, right? Anywhere between a minimum of 2.5 liters, depending on how much you weigh, up to like 6 liters, right? I know it's a big range, or even 3 to 6 liters. But, most people don't need 6 liters. I just drink that much because it just happens naturally. But like, even if you were to drink like 2.5 to 4 liters of water, right? It's kind of hard to go wrong. If you're sweating a lot, you probably need a bit more, but definitely get that sodium and electrolytes in, right? So just a quick little bonus tip here as well. My strategy right now, I'm going to Brazil, and I'm going over there December the 10th, going over there for like 5 weeks. And I've just been trying to cut down, do a cut for it, right? So long story short, like I said, 4 weeks I've been in a cut. And now what I want to do is I've got like 2 months until I go. And I'm doing it for like health as well. Yeah, I want to look lean. I'm not going to lie. I want to look better, right? I was carrying a little bit more fat than I used to be, which is like, I'm still lean, right? I just want to put that one out there. But, I'm much leaner now. I feel better. And I just feel better because I'm making better decisions as well. I'm not just eating more than I need to, right? Because I wasn't tracking. Now I'm tracking. So eat more, train more, move more. That's always my strategy. So rather than throwing the kitchen sink in, for example, now I've added, so I did the deficit. I changed the training stimulus. So I went to doing like high reps, 12 to 20 rep range, pump style training. And then I always move enough anyway. I average 11 to 12,000 steps a day, which is what I was doing anyway. Then I started tracking food and put myself into I put my deficit around about 10 to 15% under my maintenance calories roughly. So my maintenance calories around about 3,900. I was averaging about 3,300 to 3,400 for 4 weeks, give or take. So that put me into a deficit of like, I don't know, whatever that is, like 10, 15% or whatever it is below my maintenance. But what I'll do now is I'm thinking of like maybe going into a building phase now. What I'm trying to do now is just find it hard, right? I'm not going to lie to you, right? Even me, it's hard to be in a deficit. I know you think, oh, poor you, Matt, 3,300 calories and you're in a deficit. Oh, it sounds really hard. But it is hard, right? Because I like eating food just like anyone else. So I'm thinking now I'll probably come down a bit more and maybe taper the calories down a little tiny bit for the next 3 to 4 weeks. And like I say, I changed the training stimulus, which speeds the metabolism up. And then what else did I do? I added an extra, no, actually I'm doing the same amount of sessions, but let's just say now a month before Brazil, what I'll do then is I'll probably just bump myself up back to maintenance calories, right? And then I'll just add an extra training session in there. This is the thing where people go wrong when it comes to improving your body, dieting, getting leaner. They throw the kitchen sink in all at once. You wanna add slowly so you can actually you can improve results by not actually doing it much more and burning out. You want to be that marathon, not a sprint person, right? So that's what a good strategy is, to add an extra strength training session in. It speeds your metabolism up. You can get away with more calories and you look better. It's easier to retain muscle then as well when you're in that deficit. So move more, eat more is always my strategy. And with clients, for example, when they want to get leaner, I'm never, ever going to get them to move more, like add to their steps and reduce calories at the same time. You pick one of them, right? You don't put yourself into a massive deficit off the bat. You do it the smart way, right? But the big thing is you got to have a strategy for once you finish, right? What is your strategy once you've lost the weight you want to lose? You probably don't know. And most people don't know. I'm just going to do this forever. Maybe that can work. I'm going to do keto forever. Maybe that can work for the 1% of people. But the majority of you need to have a strategy for what you're going to do once you've lost the weight. It's not the same process, my friend. You have to go into a maintenance phase for a few months, for example, where you maintain your weight and you focus on building muscle. You have to reverse diet the other way at some point. Focus on rebuilding your metabolism so you can not only keep the weight off, you can live longer by adding muscle, look better aesthetically, and feel way better, right? So I'm going to give you my blueprint anyway. Forget about it. I'm going to give you my reverse dieting blueprint because I'm going to look after you. Click the link in the show notes. It's just there in the show notes. So click that link and get that. And yeah, it's yours basically. And if you are listening on Spotify, give me a rating, or on iTunes, please just give me a rating using the star rating. If you're on YouTube, comment below. I'd love to know your feedback, ladies and gents. I really do value it. And you can even comment below on Spotify now as well. But I always forget to check the notifications, but I will remember now. So do that as well. I really want to interact with you guys. I really appreciate you. I see more and more people watching and listening, and I want to really bring as much value as I can. So, all right, time to eat. Speak soon.